Welcome back to your favorite podcast, Ask the Trade Pros, a show where a couple of trade guys talk about random stuff with a little bits of trade information thrown in. We're here to answer your questions about HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and any other home system so you can help keep that home of yours running smoothly. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Todd. Today we're taking a few episodes this summer to revisit topics we've covered when we first started the podcast. So today we're looking at habits and maintenance that keep your plumbing running in great shape.
We're often called in to fix big, expensive plumbing problems all the time that could have been smaller fixes or avoided altogether with a little time and maintenance. Let's cover a couple of the simple things you can do to keep the water flowing through your home in the right way.
When you're thinking about plumbing maintenance, it's a good idea to start with visual inspections. A good visual inspection can clue you into issues early, so a small fix doesn't become a big one later.
Well, if you have a clog, don't take too close of a visual inspection of it. But we do this all the time. We'll walk through customers' homes. We have a plumbing home membership where we do a lot of this kind of work. One of the big things is to do the visual inspections of the shutoff valves, the hose bibs, the faucets, everything. You can see wear, cracks, broken handles. You'll see signs of dripping water, which shows you obviously it wasn't closing or shutting off completely. You can see areas of damage. If it's piping, exposed piping, you can see missing insulation on outdoor piping. There's a lot that an average consumer can figure out just by walking around and actually looking at many of these plumbing items.
Where would you start with that?
When I do the inspections from my point of view, I start from the outside in. I start on the outside of the house and I take a walk around the house. I'm going to inspect the service valve for the house where the water comes into the house. I want to make sure, one, it's insulated. We don't get very much cold weather here, but in some places you do. I want to make sure that there's no signs of leaking water, that nothing's broken, cracked. And I'll walk around and look at every single one of the hose bibs that's on the outside of the house from that point. From there, I'll work my way inside of the house, room by room. I'll start with the kitchen. We'll go to different bathrooms. We'll go to where the water heater is. We'll go to the laundry facilities, anywhere that water is sourced in that home. And I just want to look it over. I want to look for obvious visual problems.
So you hit a lot of good points there, Jordan, but I'm going to kind of touch a little more on a few of them. So the visual inspection, are you looking for visually leaking water? Of course, you're going to see that sometimes, but there's also other signs of leaking. Sometimes you're not going to see water dripping or water flowing. When you look at even a hose bib, a shutoff valve, a angle stop under your sink, a lot of times, even though it's not visually dripping, if you see like a calcium buildup or a white or a greenish look around that valve, that in fact is a leak. Could have sealed itself up, but if you ever see that, you know that you have a problem and that should be addressed. What I would do as well is cycle all your shutoff valves. So it's a good idea to go through and make sure your main shutoff to your house is actually functional, because if you wake up and hear water gushing through your home,
it's too late. You're flooding.
Time to get your bathing suit. You want to make sure all that's functional. So you want to go out and cycle that main shutoff valve that's going into your house. Turn it off and go inside and turn on some fixtures to make sure it's functional. If that water doesn't shut off, you know that your main shutoff valve isn't working, and I would highly recommend planning to replace that. Test your angle stops underneath your sink. If nowadays a lot of them are what we call quarter turn angle stops, or you could have one of the older multi-turn angle stops. So if you reach under that and you can't easily turn that thing off, it's time to replace it.
Now keep in mind, you don't always have to do this yourself. I know as we get older, and I've had some issues with it, if you can't climb in some of these spots and do all that testing, then you can always feel free to call your professional out there. But what you want to be aware of is where these problems are and where these fixtures in these facilities are in your house. If you don't know where they are, you don't even know where to look.
Another good way to stop problems before they even start is to be aware of what can and what can't go down your drains and toilets. I know we have a lot of customers and a lot of calls every week about clogs. Toilets are used for toilet paper. They're not used for stuffed animals, feminine products. You want to try to keep an eye on that and only put what's supposed to go down the toilet
So
down
Barbie
the toilet.
doesn't like to swim in the toilet?
No, I'm sure Barbie does like to swim, but probably not through the sewer system.
Keep in mind what goes down your kitchen sink as well. So garbage disposals will eat up solid foods, but they cannot break up everything. There's also could be grease buildup or backup depending on what you put down that kitchen sink. So be very careful on what you throw down your sinks, your kitchen sink and your bathroom sinks as well. Now remember in bathroom sinks to regularly inspect your pop-ups or the cover that covers the drain, because as most of us have this problem, we have hair and hair clogs those up.
The keynote for that is eggshells do not sharpen the blades on your garbage disposal.
How about ice?
I don't know if ice sharpens it, but you could put ice down the garbage disposal. So it's a big misconception, and I've heard this from probably at least 50 customers, and a lot of them are older customers, so maybe it was a thing back in the day, but do not put eggshells down the drain. What that's going to do is it's going to clog your drain, and it is a nightmare to get that unclogged. Now, I know we've talked about this one many times, but another important thing to visually inspect and check, and it's a good part of any maintenance, is your water heater. So regular maintenance on your water heater is very important, but here are some things to remember.
A tank is a water bomb. When you get a chance, visually inspect. So it depends on whether you have a tank or a tankless water heater. As Todd talked about earlier, if you see signs of buildup, calcium buildup, mineral buildup around the connections to the water heater, that could be a sign that water's leaking from one of those pipes. On your tank water heater, of course, that's generally on the top. On your tankless water heater, that's generally on the bottom. You also want to walk around and have some audible signs. You're not just visually looking at stuff. So remember, if your water heater's making noises or strange sounds out of it, you might want to ask a professional what that is. You don't want a water bomb going off in your house because that's a whole lot of other damage. On a tankless water heater, you just want to inspect it that all the pipes look tight, that nothing is frazzled or loose or damaged in any way when you're walking around it.
Speaking of water bombs, so on a tank water heater, you have what's called a T&P valve. That stands for temperature and pressure. Now, as the water heats, it expands, and that valve is used to relieve pressure, and or if it reaches a temperature which it can't handle, that valve is designed to open. So testing that on a regular basis is a good idea too. You want to know if that valve is functional. With Arizona's hard water, you might go to turn that thing on and it's not functional. So that's very important to make sure that that's running and working as it should. When you open that, it's spring loaded. So when you open it, water should pop, should flow right through. And once you close it, it should stop. It shouldn't continue to drip. If it does continue to drip, it's time to replace that valve.
And if you're uncomfortable checking any of these items, remember, your plumbing professional can always help you and assist you in locating them, testing them, showing you what needs to be done.
Of course, plumbing problems can still come up, even with regular maintenance. If you need help, contact your local trusted trade pro.
Go at it alone and let your house drown.
Thank you for listening today. Be sure to subscribe for future Trade Pro tips and advice.
We also want to answer your questions. So leave us a voicemail or email us, and we may feature your questions on a future episode. Check the show notes for more information on how to do this.
This podcast has been made possible by the support of our sponsor, Done Right Services.